Okay, it says some problem with the LinkedIn profile. There is a problem, but I'm assuming it's going live on YouTube.
Okay.
It seems to have some glitches, but I think we are good to start. We are
Okay.
already live for like a few seconds now. So thank you, Nancy, for joining the session today. I'm really looking forward. Thank you for making the adjustments. This is, I know, fairly early in the morning for you. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to hosting this session. There have been some questions that have come my way, which uh, will be this. So first of all, folks who have just joined, I'll give a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Malti, and I am a product consultant, product leadership coach, and a startup advisor. Been in the industry for about 24 years, and I also host and I'm the founder of Product Talk with Malti. And we started our live series last month. We did our first episode with Akash Gupta, and we received a lot of love. So that keeps me going. And I'm super happy to have Nancy Chu, who's a very, very well known product leadership coach. And I will let Nancy introduce herself. Thank you, Nancy, for taking the time out and joining us today. Do you just want to kind of give a little introduction to our users?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me onto your live stream. I usually am the host of my own live stream, so it's always very refreshing and also very humbling to be someone else's guest. And my name is Nancy. I am a PM leadership coach. I've been in technology and product for nearly 20 years, and now I coach people full time and I help them thrive in uh, high stress, dynamic environments in big tech.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. Just give me a minute because I just want to make sure that people are able to join. Uh, okay, I think we'll go ahead with this. All right. So, Nancy, the first question that I would like us to get started today is that what are some of the key traits or skills do you believe that distinguishes a great product leader from a good one?
I love this question, but I want to approach it from a more general leadership sense and not necessarily
Sure.
talking about product leadership versus non
Mm-hmm.
product leadership,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, leadership is leadership. And the way I approach and think about these high level and sometimes vague questions is to just dumb it all the way down to the most fundamental building block. So if we were to go back to our caveman and women days, our ancestors, what does leadership mean from that context? It's typically when someone joins a tribe and they feel protected, they feel supported, and feel that they understand the vision and the purpose of the tribe. And that is what leadership means to me at the most fundamental sense. Every tribe is different and every tribe has a different purpose. But there's a reason why we are part of tribes. There's a reason why we're part of communities is because our survival rate is exponentially higher when we're part of something greater than us. So
Right.
leadership from that sense is, how do you get these people to stick together? And why do these people want to follow you and not join another tribe? That to me is leadership. So product leadership or just general leadership to me all is rooted in, are you able to get people together? Are you able to help people understand your purpose? And do you help people feel seen and heard and supported?
Mm. Right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, as you said, it kind of makes sense that product leadership is just one of the roles, but it is larger the broader leadership coach, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I know that you kind of help a lot of product managers, especially who are in the mid career stage, move on to the looking to move to the next realm of their career, right? So, in this aspect, Nancy, how do you suggest kind of people find a balance between, let's say, strategic thinking and execution? Because a lot of time, I think that is where they have a lot of questions. That is where they require a lot of hand holding. So, any thoughts around that?
Well, I think anytime we're trying to balance two things together, whether it's strategic thinking versus execution, or work versus life, or think big versus thinking small. Every time when you have a balance, it's not something that you find, right? We don't and I learned this framing from Simon Sinek, and I love the way he describes what balance means. Balance is a
Uh-huh.
state of being, and it always feels like a scale or like seesaw, right? You're always going back and forth. You're always giving and taking. You're always trying to find that middle ground. So it's not a steady state that you don't that one might think you could find, because you don't find it. You actively work on it and you try to maintain this equilibrium. But sometimes the situation requires you to focus more on strategy. Sometimes the situation requires you to focus more on execution. You're not always going to be working on strategy at the end of the day. Sometimes when the strategy is already set, then you just focus on execution, right? So it's this art of giving and taking. That's what balance is. It's not something that we just find per se.
Right. That, yeah, that's true. And as you said, if you are in a phase where you have to, especially in a 0 to 1 stage, we have to keep iterating on. You have to keep delivering on your improvising on your MVP. Then you have to constantly or reorganize your strategy based on how your users are giving you the feedback, and
Right, you're iterating,
continuously
right?
iterate on that. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right. And I mean, depending upon the stage where you are. All right. One of the key aspects for a lot of product managers, Nancy, is that the art of decision making. Right? Any kind of decision. As a product manager, we are always like uh, making decisions. Whether it is okay, what should be the font of this, to whether we want to kind of pick up this initiative or not. Right? So is there some kind of a framework? Is there, how do you guide people to, in terms of how do they make their decisions?
Well, I first like to think about the opposite of this problem, which is what makes decision making hard for people.
Mm-hmm.
When there
Mm-hmm.
is a right answer versus wrong answer, then it's easy. But what makes it hard is when there isn't a right answer, or you don't know what the right answer is. So I like to
Right.
answer the question from that angle and just approach it thinking that you're just trying to make the best out of what you have. Sometimes it's because you have no data. But
Hmm.
I would say most of the time it's because there isn't a principle that you put in place that helps people make decisions fast. And uh, I think this is best answered with an example. And I really like this example. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a PM at Roku, and I was a PM working on the homepage. And on the Roku homepage, you would see channels that you could tune into and start streaming, and then you would also see ads.
Okay.
Now, on any ads platform, you want to balance user sentiment with ads revenue always. And you see that on any other ads platform. Facebook, for example, is also an ads platform. Anytime when you
Hmm.
have ads versus content, it's always a fine balance. And so
Right.
in that case, we're going back to finding balance again. It's always right, this type of movement. And that's what makes decision making hard, because there isn't always a right answer, but there is a philosophy that you could anchor your organization and thinking around. So at Roku, the thinking was, yes, we want ads, and yes, we want people to be able to watch any show that they like. Sometimes it's conflicting, because when you put an ad on the home screen, it might distract them from
Right.
watching the show that they like, and that's against our principle. But is it wrong? Not really, right? And so the principle that we had in place is, when there is an ad on the home screen, it has to be delightful to the user, such that
Right.
even if they get distracted and they tune into the ad instead of watching the show that they like, it's still delightful to the
Right.
user.
Yeah.
So
And it's
that
not intrusive.
correct, and it's delightful. Now, you would say, how can you make an ad delightful? Well, there's a really high bar that you have to hit. This makes things harder for the ads team for sure, because now they have to require a certain level of quality, right? And delightfulness to the ad. So if you think about the most delightful ads, it's probably around the ads that you see when Super Bowl is playing. Super Bowl happens in the spring, and uh, that's so if you want to see high quality ad, that's where you can see examples. But that makes it really hard to produce for the advertisers, right? There's lots of requirements that they have to meet. And so buying an ad on the home screen, one, is expensive because it's prime real estate. But secondly, Roku now made it difficult. So is it the right answer? I don't know. It depends on the perspective. But the principle is, if you're going to run an ad on the home screen, it has to be delightful. And so with the principle in place, and we have a lot of debates around it, right? We could debate around the principle, but then eventually decide. After that, though, decision making is easy.
Right. I agree. So
Yeah,
you have these guiding principles, you have the data point, and based on that, you kind of, work around these things.
right. And
Uh,
and I'll give you another simple example around principles. We have one at home, which is weekdays at 9 p.m. no more TV,
uh-huh.
right, for my kid. Now, that's a
Right,
principle. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. It's subjective. Who says
right,
9 p.m. is the right time? Why not 8 p.m.? Right?
right,
Why not 7 p.m.? Even healthier. But
right.
we picked 9 p.m. And so now my kid knows, after 9 p.m., then no more TV, right?
I,
So that's another example of first principle, and that makes decision making a lot easier. And the debate should happen on the principle level and not on the more tactical level.
right. And that's kind of the part of this whole product strategy conceptualizations, right? That is exactly where it says that, okay, it's not really a very static plan that you put is product strategy, but product strategy is basically putting these guiding
Mhm.
principles, these guardrails in place, which says kind of helps you towards that decision making.
Yes, correct. And it's not just guardrails, it's a
Directions.
a direction, it's a hypothesis that you have.
Right,
So
right,
on the Roku homepage example, the hypothesis is, if the ad is very delightful,
right,
we will not affect user sentiment. And in fact, it might even drive user sentiment, right?
right.
That's a hypothesis. And we test it. We see that this is mostly true. There's always exceptions, but for the most part, it's true. Okay, let's implement it and see what happens.
I agree. Yeah, that's right. Nancy, just give me a minute. Looks like there seems to be a problem with people are not able to join. Some of them have messaged me because I was also not able to see a lot of people joining in.
Oh, that's so weird. We're having a
Yeah,
technical issue.
I know. I'm sorry about this.
No, I host my live stream, so I get it.
I just sent out a note to people that because a couple of them just messaged me, and I don't know for whatever reason this LinkedIn thing said, though I tested it like a couple of days back,
Oh, okay.
that it created some test live this thing's also on my this thing, but I don't know what's the problem. I mean, worst, while I wanted this to be a live, looks like this could also be a recorded version, which I will
Yeah,
post it.
recording is just fine too.
I'll edit out this part. All right, so I think we'll while I try to figure out what is the problem, I think we continue our conversations, and I'm really sorry about this.
No, it's totally fine.
All right. So, yeah, I think that was a very insightful example that you took with your work at Roku, right? Now, couple of things, right? I mean, see, a lot of people actually uh, definitely need help. For example, in our careers, we have mentors and coaches who are kind of gone through that path, and that is, I think, the best learnings or benefits that we can have by having mentors and coaches in our life, right? So when somebody reaches out to you and they need help, this could be that they are looking for their next job where they would like to succeed, or it could be that they're kind of confused, how do we approach the next phase of our career. Usually, how do you kind of help them navigate through that, if there is a like a broader framework or a broader approach that you can share about, because I think that helps a lot of people to get clarity that in a coaching engagement or a mentoring engagement, how do they get benefited.
How do they get benefit from coaching? The
Yeah.
best way to answer it is as if you're getting a shortcut to reaching your goals.
Right.
Why is it a shortcut? It's because the coach or the mentor likely have already done it before, and they
Exactly.
likely have already helped other people do it. So they know the gotchas and they know the best practices, and so you'll get a shortcut. So how do you benefit from it? It depends on how much time you want to spend on trying it out yourself and then getting a shortcut. There's an opportunity cost associated
Hmm.
with it. So
Right.
um, the best way to illustrate this is in a job interview setting. So I had a
Hmm.
client who was job searching for 1 year and didn't get any job offers in 1 year. And
Okay.
we worked together for 3 months, and she walked away with 3 offers at the end of our 3-month engagement.
Ah,
Is it
okay.
worth it? Yes, because there's opportunity cost. So if we had started working earlier, then she would have gotten offers earlier and
Right.
started making impact, started earning the paycheck earlier. So
Right.
there's an opportunity cost associated with doing things yourself. Now it's up to you to decide and evaluate your opportunity cost versus an investment versus the the return on investment that you might get.
Right. Yeah, that is correct. Okay, so looks like some people are there, they're able to ask questions.
Okay.
uh,
Good.
okay. All right, so all right, so yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Is there some kind of a a broader, just kind of doubling down on the part which you were just sharing? Is there any further how do I say, when somebody, you are doing a discovery call with someone who's, let's say, a similar kind of a thing, they are looking to ace in their interview, and if they would like to understand that, how, what is your process, how do you
Mm.
approach it, is there a kind of a outline that you would like to share for the benefit of the audience?
Yeah, there's a reason why I am very active on social media and I host monthly community roundtables is to help answer the question, what is it like
Okay.
to work together? What is your approach? Can you
Uh-huh.
actually help me? And this
Okay.
is related to building trust, which
Okay.
is one of
Right.
your questions.
Right.
So let me connect the dots to building trust. At the end of the day, I need to earn your trust in order for you to decide to work with me, right? And
Right.
so I put myself out there. I show you what I'm about. And so most people, by the time they approach me, they already have a pretty good idea of
Mm-hmm.
who I am, what I'm like, how I approach things. And so that's the happy path that I want to facilitate, which means I don't have to go on discovery calls. By the time you actually reached out, you likely have attended a couple of my community roundtables.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. So they already have a understanding of and the trust factor is kind of already kicked in.
Yes. Yes, correct.
That makes sense. That
And
makes
they
sense.
probably have so I've been told this, they watch all my YouTube videos, and my
Oh,
YouTube
okay.
videos are very scrappy, not highly polished at all the way it is right now, but it gives you a sense of what I'm like and how I talk, how I be, you know?
Right. No, no. I mean, I think that's a great place to get started, and of course, they can always. So, I mean, just in case you want to share with the audience where they can find you, how they can reach out to you, if there is separate, specific mode of communication you prefer, is it LinkedIn? Is it
Yeah,
emails?
LinkedIn at slash Nancy Chu.
Okay, perfect. All right, they know where to find you.
Thanks
All
for
right.
asking.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to the next set of questions, Nancy. That like, what are the most impactful ways to mentor emerging product managers who are looking to transition to the product leadership roles? Because it's a slightly different things to kind of switch over to a leadership role, and a lot of people find themselves getting stuck there. I have personally seen that, and that is one area where I also help. So I would love to hear your perspective on that.
The most impactful way, I think what you're asking is the needle mover to
Right,
go from a IC track to a management track.
manager track. Right.
So we were just talking about trust, right? So trust
Mm-hmm.
is something that happens afterwards. You don't just get it right away. And
Right.
so to be put in a management position, leadership needs to trust that you are a good fit for this role. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you get them to trust you?
Mm.
Then now again we're coming back to talking about trust. So
Mm.
let's go deeper on that. How is trust built? It is
Mm-hmm.
built over time, right? It's not overnight. And related to how we started this podcast, we are talking about this very tribal mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So trust is where the result of helping people feel safe around them. So
Mm-hmm.
leadership needs to feel safe that you are a good fit for this role. Your people need to feel safe that you're the leader for their team.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you start to show that you have what it takes? Right? You can't just tell people, "Trust me, I'll be a good manager." Right? That won't work. So
That's
how
right.
do you show? So now let's
Right.
talk about traits that a manager has or that a leader might have. What is a manager like and what is a leader like? They're different. So
Right.
a manager is not a leader is not necessarily just someone who gives out orders,
Mm.
right? A manager or a leader is someone who actually shows that you could communicate the vision. You're probably not the one setting the vision every single time, but at least you could communicate the vision and the purpose really, really well. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to communicate the vision or the purpose on why we do things, you're then able to inspire others. So inspiration is a key trait that leaders should have. Are you
Mm.
able to inspire? Are you able to use your words and use your language to get people on board?
Correct.
Are you able to show that as an IC? And showing that is one thing, letting leadership actually see it happening is another, right? You could just because as product managers, we're already leaders, and that's the
Right.
nature of the product management role. So you're already leading within your squad or within your product team. So your team might see it, but is your leadership seeing it?
Mm.
So that all goes back to building trust, not just with your team, but also getting leadership to trust you. Now, moving to the leadership track is easier, I would say, in your current company because again,
Yeah.
you're already building trust. Now,
Correct.
going outside of your company and getting someone to trust you in an interview process, that's much harder because you don't have the experience to back it up. Like, assuming you're in first time, right? You haven't been in a management role before.
Right.
How would you get people to trust you? Well, that's really hard. Maybe you need to go through networking, maybe it's someone that you know, right? So that's where referrals really come in, but most of the time it's a lot easier in your current role, in your current company because that is where you could build trust in a more easy fashion.
I agree. Yeah. No, that's right. It all starts from a place of trust, and continuously and being very consistently demonstrating it, right?
Yes,
Like not a one time thing. And I
yes,
would say, just as you said, like, going beyond the what is expected out of you, because that is what leads people to get inspired, and you
right.
automatically starts to demonstrate that you are ready for that next level.
Yes, and inspiration h is I mean, it's fluffy on its own, right? How
Right.
do you inspire people? Well, it starts with storytelling.
Right.
That's the tactic. The tactic is storytelling. The goal is to inspire others. And
Agreed.
typically, the hardest thing for a IC is you're very good with data. You're very good with the technical details of your product. But to actually inspire people, that's a whole other skill set that we didn't really learn in school. We didn't really learn in our engineering degrees. Most of us probably come from a tech background. We didn't really learn that skill set.
Right.
So it's this is homework, or I like to say home play, because it shouldn't feel like work, it should feel like play. It Storytelling is definitely, the skill set that I highly recommend everyone, not just PMs, to learn and get better at. Looking back at my career, I was at Meta for about 6 years, and my
Okay.
total comp tripled. That
Uh-huh.
that's, like,
Wow.
crazy in 6 years. And if there's only one skill that I could attribute it to, it is storytelling.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I just so much agree with you that, everybody looks at the same data, but
Mhm.
how can you articulate the insights in a way that everybody in that room can understand the point you're trying to make, and you are able to tell it with that conviction? I think that's the game changer.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Yeah, completely. And especially, Nancy, as you said, when we kind of move up the ladder, more than your hard skills, it is these soft skills like
Mhm.
storytelling, inspiring others,
Yes.
influencing. It is
Yes.
these which basically, I would say, makes you stand out from somebody else.
Yes, which is another reason why, I don't really like to refer to it as soft skills. I know people use that terminology, but it doesn't really capture the essence of the work because it's not
Mm,
necessarily soft. The work that we have to do to inspire, the work that we have to do to make people feel heard and seen, that's not necessarily soft. It's it's people skills, it's
yeah,
how to be human,
right.
which
Yeah.
oftentimes gets forgotten in the business world.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And eventually I think we all need to agree and anchor on a part that, eh, I mean, the work that we do, we are all surrounded by humans. So the
Yes.
more that aspect we keep at the core of it, I
Yes.
think we automatically will go towards the path of success.
Yes, well said.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And Nancy, actually, I probably have one, like, follow up question on what you said, which you, when you said that, when you are trying to move from a IC role to a product leadership role within the same organization,
Mhm.
one is that you would have built your credibility, the trust factor is already there. But if I just switch this to, let's say, a product interview setup
Yeah.
where you have like 1 hour, yeah,
Mhm.
when you're meeting this hiring manager, or when you're meeting this the person on the other side assessing you, are there like some, how do I say, actionable tips which people can, practice so that they're able to elevate that trust level, so that, the articulation that they're doing is
Mhm.
kind of captures the essence?
Well, in an interview setting, because the time is very limited and you're talking to a stranger, that means there
Right.
is no trust between you and the other
Correct.
person other than your resume.
Correct.
That means you basically have to captivate from the get go.
Right.
And most of the people going to interviews, and they would dive really deep down into, tell me about a time when you did X, Y, and Z, right? That most people would answer the question using STAR framework or one of his cousins.
Hmm.
It all starts with S, the situation. which is us going all the way down. And then
Right.
you might come back up to talk about maybe some tasks that you've done or how you've taken action. But then you'll go down again to describe what those actions are, and then you might come back up to talk about the results. So if you look at the shape of that communication, it's either a V or a W or a U, depending on how
Uh-huh.
deep you stay in the valley with all the details.
Right.
But if your goal is to sound like a leader and articulate like one, this type of communication, whether it's W shape or V shape or U shape, it doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
How do
Okay, I
leaders
never thought like
communicate?
that.
Right. So leaders, we all say, oh, our leaders are they're very high level, right? They don't really know the details. Sometimes we say our leaders are really fluffy.
Uh,
Why is
hmm.
that? It's because they're high level.
Hmm.
But that's because their role is standing on
Yeah.
higher level. So let's put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine that we're standing on top of the mountain. Leaders get a wide view of
Agreed.
the state of the union, right? They see what is going on. They see that, oh, the storm might come, but we're on the ground. We don't
Right.
see the storm. It's blocked by all the trees, but they're standing on top so they could see more.
Right.
It also means that because they're not on the ground, they can't see the grass, they can't see the mushrooms, but they
Right.
see top of trees, and they might see and say things, "Oh, there's a group of red trees here, there's a group of green trees here. Oh, there's storm coming," right? Their perspective is just higher, so they see more.
Hmm.
Our perspective makes it very easy for us to say, there's this one time when I saw this grass and this type of mushroom growing next to it.
Hmm.
So, in an interview setting, you can't start your story by talking about the grass and the mushrooms. You have to start
Right.
your story at the high level. That's how you sound like a leader because your perspective is just different and it's higher. So, you want to start the story by saying, based on what I've seen, and if the storm is coming, I could guide my people to go over there where they won't be affected by the storm, right? That's the
Right.
analogy. So uh, I'll go back to one of the questions you asked me earlier on this podcast. You asked me about decision making. How do we make fast decisions? And
Mm-hmm.
I eventually gave you an example, but I didn't give you the example right away, right? If I were
Hmm.
to use a STAR framework to answer your question, then I would say, let me tell you about a time when I was able to make decisions fast, right? I would start with the S. So when I was a Roku, blah, blah, blah. But that's not how I answered you. The way I answered you is I would like to actually approach it from the opposite side, which is what makes it hard for people to make decisions fast.
Hmm.
And then I said, well, it's probably because there is no right answer.
Right.
When there is a right answer, it's easy, right?
Right.
That's not S. That's not the S of the STAR framework. So I
Right.
call it the bluff framework. It's not okay. I didn't make up the term bluff. It's a framework that um, describes how people communicate in the military. So in the
Mm-hmm.
military, you sometimes don't have a lot of time to communicate and talk about all the details. So
Right.
BLUF stands for bottom line upfront. So
Uh-huh.
my bottom line upfront to answer your question is, well, let's just first talk about why sometimes it's hard to make decisions fast.
Right.
It's because there is no right answer, right? That's my
Right.
bluff. And so in an
Right.
interview setting, how do you come across as a leader? You have to sound like one, you have to talk like one. And the tactic there is go high level first.
Hmm. Right. Because I think that also helps you set the context
Yes.
and not get into caught into the tacticals of, I was looking at this metric or I
Yeah.
was looking at this particular action.
Yeah.
Because you were right. I mean, you have only this much time, and
Yes.
the person on the other side might just get lost. And today, I think keeping the attention of and the interest of the person on the other side is also like extremely hard. I completely get
Great
appreciate, and that
question.
was thank you. But yeah, and I mean, I learned about this bluff framework today, So that sounds very, very interesting. I'm going to take one question from the audience, Nancy. Dhana is asking, when someone lands a dream job, however, after joining, one realizes that while the role is phenomenal, the culture is toxic. How
Yeah.
does one address that?
Um, let's go back to our tribal mentality again.
Uh huh.
You would never know what the tribe is like until you join, right? That's just the nature of it. And then when you join the tribe, you have two decisions. You have to fit in. So the decision is, do you want to fit in or not?
Hmm. Hmm.
It sounds very easy, but if you think about it from the most fundamental term, tribal mentality is you get to decide if you want to fit in or not. If you want to stay there, you have to fit in.
Hmm.
You cannot stay in a tribe and feel like you belong if you don't fit in. And there's
Hmm.
a reason why people kind of do things in similar way. That's because they're in the same tribe and they're all trying to fit in. They're all trying to feel that sense of belonging, right?
Right.
If you don't belong there, then you don't fit in, then that's not the tribe for you. Most
Hmm.
people though, they fear what it would be like if they're not part of a tribe. That's another that's another way of describing this feeling that you might be feeling, which is I want to stay, but not really. It looks very shiny on the outside, but it's not so shiny on the inside. And that happens all the time. But you have choices, I would assume. If you don't have a choice, okay, let's start there. If you don't have a choice, then you have to do what it takes to fit in. But if you do
Exactly.
have a choice, you don't have to stay there.
Hmm. I agree. Otherwise, but if you have to stay there for whatever reasons, then you probably make amendments, or you try to
Mhm.
influence to see if there is a change that you can bring in.
There's probably micro level changes that could happen, but at a
Right.
macro level, unless you're the leader, you can't really
Right.
change that much.
Yeah, that's right. Because I mean, we are talking about culture, right? I mean,
Yes,
culture is not something that changes overnight. It's not
right.
that I have joined as a leader and from tomorrow everybody
Yes.
else starts, behaving differently.
I
It
would
takes
say
multiple years.
culture starts from the top,
Right.
right? We know
Absolutely.
this. So, how do we get a sense of the culture before we join? Well, you look at how their leader operates,
Right.
which probably will give you a sense. But if the organization is really, really big, you might see pockets of
Right.
different types of culture, but more on a micro level. So then you observe what the leader is like in that subculture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why I think today, when people are like interviewing, right? I mean, this culture fitment, both from an organization perspective as well as from a candidate's perspective, is a very, very important yardstick, especially I would say for a product leadership role, because this is such a how do I say, cross functional role. It is
Mhm.
very, very important that you kind of make the right kind of assessments, which could be getting feedback from people who have worked there earlier, or asking the right kind of questions.
Yeah.
Get a feel of it, that how does one recognizes a workplace culture. Okay, one question, it seems to be kind of going a little bit more deeper on that side, is that Radhika is asking is, what are the signs one should look for recognizing a toxic workplace culture? Do you want to answer that, Nancy?
Well, I'll answer it with my own experience.
Okay.
I would say it's hard to know whether it's toxic, but if you have already experienced it, then it's probably easier to sniff out because your body remembers.
Yeah.
Your body remembers what it was like when you were
Right.
in a toxic environment before. Something is going to feel off. And
Yeah.
whether or not it's you're conscious of it, that's a different question. But most of the time, people try to apply their intellectuals to assess the environment. But oftentimes, though, it is not what is said, but what is the unsaid that feels
Needs to be
off,
correct.
right? So if you have been through it, your body remembers. And so if your stomach feels weird, your back feels heavy, y- you just have a very icky feeling about the situation, then you would know, even though you don't really have the words to describe it, you don't really have the data per se. But this is where I utilize the whole body and leverage all the sensors that we have all over. It's not just the head, but just everywhere. If something feels off, then I know something is off and I trust it.
Right.
And then once my brain is aware that I'm processing all the what all the signals that are unsaid, then it will start to pick out patterns that I can recognize. It will then surface the reasons why I'm feeling weird about the situation. But
Yeah.
the data, the intellectual probably comes later. First comes the feeling.
Right.
So being really aware of how your body is reacting to a certain situation is step 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. And I mean, I think our intuition, our gut is, like one of the biggest sources that one could look at.
Yes,
Uh,
and
you know,
people don't trust
reading.
it that much.
I agree. I mean, I think sometimes it's also because a lot of times we are so caught up in that shiny opportunities and this
Yes.
thing, so we do tend to ignore those intuitions. But
Yes.
I think you're right. So I do agree that you can feel those signals, the body language, the way the questions are answered, and a lot of those things. But I would also say tactically, if people want to kind of walk away with any tactical these things would be to basically uh, you also need to ask the questions that you think can give you the signals
Yeah.
of how the person, whether it is the hiring manager or the peer manager peer person who's interviewing you, how they are kind of responding to it,
Mhm.
getting in touch with people who have already worked there. So culture fitment should be a very, very important yardstick
Yes.
for a candidate, because there is so much of energy that goes in terms of not only from an interview process, but just your investment to get started in a new place. And then within a few days, few weeks, if you find this is not what I signed up for, then it takes you, kind of offsets you back by so much of time and effort, right? So it's
Yes.
very vital to kind of look out for those signals.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Yomit has a question that do you recommend any optimum practice to deal with team conflicts?
Practice to deal with team conflicts. Let's always start with understanding why the conflict existed in the first place. That's
Hmm.
always the first place I would think about. So the practice starts with figuring out the why. And
Hmm.
then you can then discern whether it's your job to resolve the conflict or not. Sometimes it's not necessarily up to you. But what
Hmm.
if it is? Then you want to understand first, you understand the why, and then second, you understand where the conflict is coming from, the source of the conflict. Is it because of a tops down reason or is it because of a bottoms up reason?
Right.
Tops down is typically when the goals are misaligned,
Hmm.
or sometimes something feels like it's the right thing to do, but the incentive structure is not there.
Hmm.
You'll have a conflict, but it's tops down. Tops down is sometimes easier to resolve because it's not personal.
Correct.
But if it's bottoms up, that's where things get really personal. When someone misbehaves or someone is late on the deadline or someone said what they're going to do and then they don't follow through and
Then,
then maybe your dependency change your mind, like whatever it is, bottoms up is typically harder to resolve because now you're talking about people issues.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I think you kind of answered that pretty well. And yes, I think basically any kind of conflict, I think we need to start with the root cause as to why the conflict exists. And I think I would say, just want to kind of summarize it with one thing, is that starts with empathy, right? I mean, I think the most important thing for a conflict is to understand where they come from before you look at resolution of the conflict itself.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Folks, please sending your questions if you have more questions. Uh, I think something which is more relevant to today's state of affairs where we are, Nancy, where there are a lot of folks who are, looking to move into product leadership roles, but the opportunities, the ratio
Mhm.
of opportunities versus number of people is kind of slightly skewed, right? So there are many product leaders who are trying to apply for this fewer roles.
Mm.
So how do you recommend them in order to practice so that they could be the shiny people or stand out from the rest of others? Any tips or guidance that you have?
At the end of the day, we're talking about fit.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily about being the best. It could feel
Right.
like it. I get it. It feels like there's only one spot and that you have to be the best.
Hmm.
People kind of feel that it's analogous to getting the gold medal at the Olympics.
Hmm.
Only the best person can get it. That's not actually the case in a job search environment. It's not about being the best in the absolute sense, it's about being the best fit. Now, being the
Right.
best fit doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best from the absolute sense. So, when there's a supply and demand mismatch, you have to really demonstrate fit at the end of the day. So, it's not about being the best, but it's about being the best fit. How do you demonstrate fit is you have to really understand their problems, their goals, their struggles, their setup. And you have to understand why they're struggling. And then you can go in and have these conversations. But because you already know what their struggles are and why they're struggling, you're more likely to be able to demonstrate fit versus just trying to portray that you're the best.
Hmm. But does that mean getting more context of what people are looking for in
Yes.
that job? This thing. Do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, there's a lot that can be um, looked at in between the lines. So, reading
Mm-hmm.
in between the lines. I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
If the hiring manager or the job description says that they want someone who understands agile ceremonies, I'm just making it up because I saw it
Sure.
one time in a job description.
Sure.
Agile ceremonies was on the
Mm-hmm.
job description. So if
Mm-hmm.
that is there, there must be a
Mm-hmm.
reason why they put it there.
Mm.
Why would someone why would some organization look for someone who understands agile ceremonies? Like it's very specific. Well, it's probably because they have an understanding that the ceremonies will be the needle mover.
Mm-hmm.
If
Correct.
that's the case, then you would get a sense of what this organization thinks about. They're thinking
Mm.
about ceremonies, right? They're thinking about the process to being agile. They're not really thinking about what it actually means to be agile. They're thinking about the process to follow to be agile. And so it
Exactly.
already means that they're not agile,
Mm. Striving towards that.
right? And then they want someone who will come and host these ceremonies or hold the teams accountable for doing these ceremonies. That means the team on the ground is not very aware of what
Right.
these ceremonies are. That means the team on the ground doesn't already have a process that
Right.
works in a smooth way.
Right.
So, all of these things, I am I'm kind of guessing, but I'm probably more accurate than not just by reading 2 words on a job description. And there's a lot of inferences and hypotheses that you can make just from these 2 words. Now, imagine if you get the hiring manager to actually talk more about the challenge and they'll give you more than 2 words. You can then decipher and read between the lines and make a lot of hypotheses. And then you can come and demonstrate fit because you have a pretty good understanding of where they're coming from. So if you're
Right.
trying to demonstrate fit for someone who is looking for people who can host agile ceremonies, then how do you demonstrate fit? It's not just talking about, yes, I could host scrum meetings. It's not just talking about, yes, I could do backlog grooming every other week.
But yeah,
You actually want to talk about the benefits
right.
of following said ceremonies.
Correct.
That's how you
And the how
demonstrate
part
fit.
of it maybe, and the outcomes that you have seen,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes. And then you also want to say, these are the common pitfalls
Hmm.
that teams have faced when following ceremonies,
Right.
right? That's how you demonstrate fit.
Right. Yeah. I think reading for example, the JDs bit more carefully,
Mhm.
getting
In between the
a,
lines.
in between the lines. I think getting to know the company a little bit more, doing your research on the company, and deeply understanding what are the expectations. For example, even asking this kind of a question sometimes upfront, what is expected out of this role, can
Mhm.
actually give you these kind of clues where you can demonstrate.
I actually have a power move that I recommend to my clients. Not
Uh-huh.
everyone is comfortable making this move, but when you
Right.
do make it and when you do own it, it works really, really well, which is in the initial conversation, assuming that they invited you to have a conversation, you would then
Right.
ask, you must see thousands of resumes a day. What made you reach out? Or what in
Mm.
my profile stood out to you?
Right.
It's such a power move because
It
it's a
is.
very, very targeted question. And right away, you know why they're talking to you. And then you
Exactly.
use that data and leverage it. But not
Right.
everyone is comfortable asking this question.
Yeah.
But if you are comfortable, I highly recommend it.
I agree. And the early you do it in the
Yeah.
process, I think the better you have an understanding of what is, the your unique offering or value proposition, because of which you have been shortlisted.
Yes. And I want to touch on the spirit of discovery, which is not
Right.
often talked about in a job interview process. Part of the work is discovery. You're trying to discover what they need. And so
Right.
this is where you want to put on the detective hat and detect and try to discover everything that is said and everything that's not said. Most of the time, candidates focus on trying to show that I'm the best, right? Trying to come up with the perfect answers. But that's half of the game. The other half is you discovering what they actually need.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. No, I mean, I think it's as much as your, prospective employers are looking to learn more about you. I think you can up your game by constantly reading the room, by
Yes.
reading in between the lines, and that kind of improvises your chances of getting through that.
Yes, and you want to do the discovery so that you could leverage it in your answers.
I agree. I
So
agree.
I don't recommend just prepping for the interview in a vacuum. We
Right.
want to take inputs from them and then leverage it in our stories.
I agree. I agree. No, that's a very, very powerful move. So thank you for sharing that. And folks, if there are more questions, please send it. We have few more minutes, and we can take some more questions. And maybe while we are waiting for any other question, one question that I would like to ask, again on behalf of the audience, somebody had messaged me this question to ask you, is that as so many product managers work with you, are there any specific set of AI product tools, especially the one which are used during discovery, that you recommend to be used by the product managers? Any tools that you have used?
I think we should talk about which aspect of discovery. Is
I
it
think
to
it's more around user research. It is more around, sourcing data from various sources. I think it was kind of very open ended.
okay.
Uh, from a
Um,
product build up phase.
so it starts with understanding okay, so if you're conducting user research
Right.
and not just doing research, but actually conducting user research,
Uh huh.
um, you first want to understand what types of questions you should ask to get the users to give you the most insightful answers.
Correct.
So we actually want to start there by understanding what is a good question versus a bad question.
Hmm. Yeah,
I would say most product managers actually don't know how to ask very good questions.
I
We
agree.
think that we're good at user research, but there's actually a lot of research that goes into how to actually conduct research. And that's why researchers are a lot better at research compared to product managers. So the first step in discovery is to actually learn how to actually conduct research.
Right. I agree.
So it's
I
not
mean, while it is,
necessarily about which AI tool.
huh,
Let's start let's start more upstream, which is, do you have a good understanding of what makes a research a round of research successful and
yeah.
actually uh, accurate enough? A lot of the research is not accurate
Hmm.
enough. So what is
Yeah,
left?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Because, as you said, I mean, a lot of, while there are some guiding principle, these could be open ended questions, should not be very leading questions, kind of a thing. But not many of us actually spend a lot of time in
That's
kind of,
correct.
specifically defining these questions.
Yes, and also the ordering of the question, the sequence
Exactly.
of the questions, and how you target the right people to ask these questions,
Right.
and the breakdown of the different types of people that you're asking,
I
and
agree.
where are they in the user journey when you approach them.
Correct.
All of
And
these
these
things we don't really think about when we're designing a research plan, but that's where I would start.
I agree. And these are very, very important because only when you minutely prepare and very thoughtfully design your user
Yes.
research, keeping this, the likelihood that you'll really find some unmet needs, have those aha moments where your users are telling about their problems, you'll be
Mhm.
able to observe it only when you have thoughtfully designed
Yeah.
this entire user research.
And I'll give you a very recent example. I was reading research on why people on people's sentiment for recommended videos on
Uh-huh.
whatever platform you can think on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, any
Okay.
platform that serves video content. On
Okay.
this research report, it said that something about almost half of the people have a problem with the recommendations, that
Uh-huh.
they don't feel like the recommendation is that good.
Relevant.
It's not that relevant. But then almost the same number of people said that they wish that they had better control of the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it
Interesting.
reported in the survey. But this is where I started to read between the lines. Why would users want control of the algorithm? It's probably because they don't like the content that they're seeing.
Hmm. Correct.
So is it that users actually want to control the algorithm or they just want better content?
I think it's more the latter.
Correct. But that's what the research shows. So then you would ask, well, I wonder what kind of questions they asked in this survey to get this result.
Yeah.
So it's not about which AI tool is is more recommended. It really goes down to how you design surveys and whether your questions are um, laid out the best way possible.
Right. Especially contextual to what you're trying to learn. Do you have the right set of customers pool that you have picked up? Is it heterogeneous enough? Where they are in their user journey, and the sequencing, and the whole uh, the tailoring of the questions itself is very, very fundamental to this.
Yeah, especially going beyond what the users are saying. Why are they saying that they want better control of the algorithm? That's
Right.
that's very strange because the way people approach using these apps is it's a very passive consumption model.
Correct.
Why do you want to control the algorithm when your mindset is, okay, I have 10 minutes, let please distract me with the best content. Like people's mindset is not necessarily I want control. There has to be a reason why they're saying it. Needing control is not an actual user need.
To do so. I agree. Nobody spends. How many of us really go and spend time to say that, okay, let me do the settings to see what is the type of
Exactly.
content that I want to look
That's
at, right?
exactly it.
It just
Exactly.
assumes that based on what, wherever I'm clicking, wherever I'm seeing what, the product should, automatically, platform
Yes.
should automatically tell me the
Yes.
the best content.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's
Imagine
kind of
giving you a knob to actually control the algorithm.
right.
I
Nobody's
don't
going to use.
I don't know that users would actually go in and tweak all the
it.
knobs.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, we can see it in our, even in our a very simple product, like for example, a microwave, right? How
Yeah.
many of us, there are so many menu items which are there,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
I think I don't even remember I have used any one of them. All I do is start and stop.
Right. Right. That's why they put now like shortcuts.
Exactly.
Yes, on the
So
microwave. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, this is again, you can complicate your product as much as you can, but it is very important to very have a basic understanding of your users.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a very fantastic example. Just takes me back to my earlier days. All right. So I think we don't have any more new questions coming in, but thank you so much, Nancy.
Thanks for having
I
me.
really, really appreciate you taking the time out. And I think we definitely had some glitches with LinkedIn Live has not gone live, but I do see YouTube Live is on.
Oh, so LinkedIn Live didn't work.
Yes, yeah, it has some issues. I
Oh,
think it is
okay.
more to do
Weird.
with the Riverside issue.
Okay.
But yeah, I will take a recording of this and will be sharing it on my LinkedIn and YouTube. But I really appreciate taking the time out and answering some of those fantastic questions. And yeah, let's keep in touch, and good luck for your product coaching.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.